It is a study in a predator that hunts not out of malice, but as a direct, unstoppable consequence of being perceived. Our investigation begins in the silent, unforgiving altitude of the Andes. The year is 1924. The official report filed with the Royal Geographical Society documents the complete disappearance of the 5-man Alastair expedition, an ambitious attempt to summit a previously unclimbed peak. They were seasoned mountaineers, well equipped for the era, and their last communication spoke of fair weather and good progress. Then there was only silence. Weeks later, a search party discovered their final abandoned campsite at the base of the summit. The scene they found was not one of a natural disaster. The canvas of the main tent was not torn by wind, but shredded from the outside by a force of impossible strength. Supplies were scattered violently across the snow. A heavy steel ice axe was found bent at a perfect 90-degree angle, but there was no blood. There were no bodies. The only artifact recovered from the scene was a single, frost-damaged box camera, its leather casing cracked, its lens thankfully intact. The expedition had not merely perished, they had been erased. The high-altitude plateaus of the Andes are home to legends as ancient as the mountains themselves. Among the fragmented folklore of the isolated Quechua-speaking communities, there are references to the Hueso Pálido, the pale bone. It is not described as a monster in the traditional sense. It is a figure of profound, sorrowful avoidance.
Witnesses, always from a great distance, describe a tall, unnaturally thin and emaciated humanoid figure with skin as white as sun-bleached bone. It is typically seen standing motionless, its back to any observer, its long, spindly hands covering its face. It is said that a sound of quiet, inconsolable weeping can sometimes be carried on the thin mountain air. Local traditions are not ones of hunting or fighting this entity. The law is unanimous. The Hueso Pálido is a place of sorrow, a tragic feature of the landscape. It is an omen to be given a wide berth, to be left entirely to its own grief, and above all else, to never, ever be looked upon. The core of this phenomenon, the trigger for its transformation from a passive entity into an unstoppable predator, is a law of horrifying, absolute simplicity. Its face must not be viewed. The archives have cross-referenced this case with other, more modern reports, and the mechanism is absolute. The trigger is not the entity perceiving you. It is you perceiving it. Direct line of sight is fatal, but the curse is more insidious than that. To view it face through a reflection, a video recording, or even a still photograph is enough to activate its aggressive state. The act of observation itself is the transgression.
This brings us back to the single artifact recovered from the Alastair expedition, the camera. Of the dozen photographic plates it contained, only one had survived the cold and the violence. It was a triumphant summit photograph. 4 of the 5 members of the expedition stand exhausted but victorious against the breathtaking Andean vista. The image quality is poor, the focus slightly soft.
But our archival technicians, in their analysis, noted a microscopic anomaly. In the distant background, standing in the shadow of a neighboring peak, is a single pale figure. Upon digital magnification, the shape is indistinct, but at its highest point, where a head should be, there is a configuration of just 4 pixels. A beige pixel, a white pixel, another beige, and a single black pixel. To the human eye, it is nothing, a flaw in the emulsion. But according to the entity's own horrific logic, this configuration is enough. This is the image of a face. From a recovered frost-damaged journal belonging to the expedition's geologist, we can reconstruct their final hours. The initial entries are filled with scientific observation and the jubilant spirit of discovery. They had reached the summit. They were heroes. The final entries, however, tell a different story. Trapped in their tent by a sudden change in weather, they were rationing supplies and developing the photographic plates as a way to pass the time.
The journal describes the moment one of the climbers, a man named Harris, was examining the summit photograph with a small magnifying glass, checking the focus of the distant peaks. An entry reads, "Harris is convinced he's found a flaw in the plate, a strange white smudge in the background. Looks a bit like a man if you squint." This is the moment of their death sentence. They did not know it, but in that tent, by the flickering light of a lantern, the face had been seen. A few hours later, the final entry in the journal is a panicked, barely legible scrawl. The handwriting is a testament to absolute terror. The crying has stopped. God, it's coming back for us. The ink trails off the page. The implication is clear. They had heard the weeping from a distance, perhaps for days, and dismissed it as the wind. But now it had fallen silent. The passive state was over. The hunt had begun. In the final analysis, the entity known as the Shy Man is a perfect self-contained paradox. It is a creature of seemingly limitless destructive power, yet its only apparent desire is to be left in a state of unobserved grief. It does not hunt out of malice, hunger, or territorial aggression. It hunts as a direct, mechanical, and unstoppable consequence of its one absolute rule being broken. It is a tragedy that punishes the simple human act of looking. This archive acknowledges that other, more modern organizations have since attempted to classify and contain this phenomenon. Redacted files speak of automated reconnaissance drones sent to its location, their video feeds instantly triggering a breach as soon as the entity's face came into frame. Containment procedures are not based on walls or weapons, but on a complex system of mimetic filters and information suppression. The entity cannot be fraught. It can only be, with great difficulty, ignored. It remains a terrifying constant in the high Andes, a sentient yarn mine whose trigger is the human gaze.